ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. We begin tonight with a strange day in the strange trial of a strange man. First, we learned late today that Theodore Kaczynski, who's accused of being the Unabomber, may have tried to hang himself in his jail cell overnight, apparently using his underwear. We learned that after he had been in court for the day. Today, Kaczynski actually had his lawyers argue to the judge that he should be allowed to defend himself, because his lawyers insist on having a jury hear evidence that suggests Kaczynski is mentally ill, and he doesn't want to make any such concession. As we said, it is strange. ABC's Ken Kashiwahara is in Sacramento.
It was after Kaczynski got to court this morning that authorities discovered the apparent suicide. In court today, there was no mention of Kaczynski's apparent suicide attempt. He appeared calm and in control. When one of his attorneys, Judy Clark, announced he wanted to represent himself, that resulted in a lengthy discussion about who's in charge, Kaczynski or his lawyers, and about whether he is legally competent to be his own attorney. Then a bizarre spectacle. Prosecutors supported Kaczynski, saying he has a constitutional right to represent himself. His own defense team disagreed, arguing that the very fact he refuses to accept his mental illness suggests that he is not competent. The finding that Theodore Kaczynski is competent to stand trial came after he spent nearly 20 hours being examined by psychiatrist Sally Johnson. But except for that, almost everything else in this unpredictable trial is still up in the air. In court, the question turned on whether Kaczynski will be allowed to represent himself, as he has requested. Today, the judge, who has yet to rule on the issue, suggested that Kaczynski may have made the request too late in the trial process. Kaczynski has tried to fire his attorneys because they want to portray him as mentally ill, a defense Kaczynski strongly opposes. The judge could order the attorneys to do what Kaczynski wants, but today his lawyers said they would oppose that. Or he could order Kaczynski to agree to a mental illness defense.
In California, the trial of the Unabomber has come to an abrupt end, just as opening statements were about to start. Ted Kaczynski pleaded guilty to murder in exchange for life in prison. The plea bargain spares his life, and it spares the government from trying a man with serious mental problems. In Sacramento, first of all, here's ABC's Ken Kashiwahara.
Kaczynski's agreement to plead guilty came minutes after the judge ruled he could not be his own attorney as he had requested. Then the proceedings came to an abrupt halt as defense attorneys huddled with prosecutors to work out a plea bargain which they had been negotiating for months. Kaczynski had previously insisted on the right to appeal in exchange for a guilty plea. Today, he dropped all demands. And the Justice Department had insisted on pursuing the death penalty, believing Kaczynski to be sane. That position changed after a federal psychiatrist found him to be a paranoid schizophrenic.
Society tries to make everyone act the same by burying all human nature and instincts. That's what school, laws, jobs, and parents do, whether they realize it or not. And then the few who stick to their natural instincts are cast out as psychos, lunatics, strangers, or just plain different. Crazy, strange, weird, wild. These words are not bad or degrading.
Our society tends to regard as a sickness any mode of thought or behavior that is inconvenient for the system. When an individual doesn't fit into the system, it causes pain to the individual as well as problems for the system. Thus, the manipulation of an individual to adjust into the system is seen as a cure for a sickness, and therefore is good. Imagine a society that subjects people to conditions that make them terribly unhappy, then gives them the drugs to take away their unhappiness. Instead of removing the conditions that make people depressed, modern society gives them antidepressant drugs. In effect, antidepressants are a means of modifying an individual's internal state in such a way as to enable him to tolerate social conditions that he would otherwise find intolerable.
Halloween, 1996. Eric is in his sophomore year in high school, and he has attended a Halloween party as the Unabomber. We know this from the testimony of Jennifer Hazel, who mentions this fact in her handwritten witness testimony after the Columbine massacre.
Liberty requires the existence of evil to be possible. To eliminate evil, society would either engineer people's desires so that everyone wants only what is defined as good, or preemptive restraint to stop unauthorized thoughts.
Fingers are pointing tonight, but it's too early for federal agents to know who is responsible for a letter bomb that killed a timber industry lobbyist in California this afternoon. An employee of the California Forestry Association apparently brought in a small package from outside the office, and when another employee attempted to open it, the package exploded, blowing out windows and doors of the small brick building. Federal investigators do not believe this bombing is related to last week's deadly bombing in Oklahoma.
I felt that in the eyes of the world, that I was some kind of sickie.
But I never lost my hard inner core of self-esteem. I refused to be defeated. Instead of accepting the contemptible image of myself that the human race seemed to be trying to impose on me, I put myself at war with the human race.
I knew that I was better than all of them.
One key influence on Eric will become crystal clear and undeniable in the next segment. The Unabomber played a profound role in shaping his ideas and worldview. You'll also notice just how strikingly similar the two men were.
I skipped the 6th grade. It seems fairly obvious that it was this event which eventually led to my becoming practically a social cripple.
The dumb guidance counselor at my school told my parents that I should skip a grade. This event was a disaster because the kids did not accept me. This made me generate a great deal of resentment that I remember, and the relentless quality of these people made me want to revenge myself upon them. Once I was in 7th grade, I quickly slid to the bottom of the pecking order. I became thoroughly cowed, and I stayed that way all throughout high school. I was usually afraid to defend myself when insulted or abused, unless the offenders were, like me, in the lower part of the pecking order. Instead of becoming aggressive, I simply ignored the insults as best I could. I used to fantasize about becoming a dictator and enacting revenge on these people. I would fantasize about wiping out the entire human race by means of an atomic war or some such apocalyptic scenario.
If I could nuke the world, I would, because so far, I hate all of you.
Due to school and due to my parents' verbal harassment when I would arrive home from school, I often ended up in my room with my face buried in my pillow, crying and dreaming futilely of revenge. At age 13, in high school, I asked a girl out to the fall dance. She informed me in crystal clear terms that no self-respecting woman would ever want to be seen with me at the dance.
Women would let me call them, but they'd always avoid answering me. They'd lie about why they couldn't take a call or have their parents cover for them.
Later that same year, a boy and girl were having a conversation in my class. She said, "I'm going to such and such place with Ted." The boy looked at her incredulously and said, "You're going with him?" while pointing at me. She laughed loudly and said, "No, not with him, but with Ted so-and-so."
Eric asked me out to the prom during our class. I told him no, and many of the kids in the class laughed at him.
It was a big joke to them. I was a big joke to them. By this time, it was clear to me that my classmates regarded me as some kind of freak. I never again attempted to make advances to any girl while I was in high school. The reader must realize by now that in high school and college that I often became terribly angry at someone or hated someone, but as a matter of prudence, I could not express these feelings openly. I would therefore indulge in fantasies of dire revenge. But due to my strong conditioning from the system, I was too afraid to ever act on these feelings. Thus, when I had a fantasy of revenge, I had very little comfort from it because I was all too clearly aware that nothing had ever come of it. This became frustrating and humiliating. Knowing my revengeful fantasies are not being realized completely spoiled them for me. Thus, my hatreds accumulated, and I swore one day I would break free of law and order. I became more and more determined that someday I would actually take revenge on some of the people that I hated. The reader by now surely realizes that I have a tremendous fund of hatred. This fund is increased with every new difficulty that organized society imposed on me. It is only now in retrospect that I am able to understand just how deep the social rejection during my time in school has really affected me. It's made me very bitter about it all. As I got into my teens, I became very callous and uncompassionate, which stemmed from my resentment I felt toward the whole human race on account of the way I was treated by my schoolfellows. By the end of my 4th year at Michigan, I was deeply demoralized, discouraged, and bitter. By this time, I had become completely alienated from the entire human race. I made it a principle to avoid all social feelings insofar as possible. There was no one whom I respected, and no one whose friendship I desired. I had no confidence in my ability to be accepted by people. There is a point beyond which the desire for revenge against society becomes more important than the desire to enjoy that which is worthwhile in life.
If you get pissed, well, then go kill some people and take out some aggression. Go for it. What do you have to lose? Your life? The human race is not meant to last anyways. I hate you people for leaving me out of so many fun things. You people had my phone number, but no. Don't let the weird Eric kid come along. Oh, fucking no.
I know what you're thinking. Is that it? Is that the only similarities between the Unabomber and Eric Harris? The answer is no. There is much, much more that these two men have in common with each other.
Both Eric Harris and the Unabomber had brothers that they loved and brothers who felt like they had close bonds with them. It is a tragic fact of the matter. Those brothers are victims to their crimes as well. David Kaczynski has had to live his entire life with the guilt of turning his brother in. And Kevin Harris has had to live the rest of his life constantly changing numbers, constantly in fear of people finding out who he is. Even to this day, the Harris family has no peace.
I think it takes a whole perfect storm to create someone as violent as my brother.
If you find my actions incomprehensible, it is because you have never experienced sufficiently intense anger and frustration over a long enough period of time. You don't know what it means to be under an immense burden of frustrated anger and how vicious it can make one become.
The majority of the audience won't even understand my motives either. They'll just say, "Ah, he's crazy," or "He's insane. Oh well, I wonder if the Bulls won." It's completely worthless. Why should I explain myself to you survivors when half of you won't even understand? I say that we should kill all mankind. No one should survive. We all live in lies.
The Unabomber has a segment in his journals where he attempts to state that he was more motivated by his frustration with society as a whole than his experience of pure rejection across the board.
I think that the powerful resentments I experienced from being treated with contempt and condescension did in fact cause me to have a strong tendency to anger, and having to stifle my own anger as an act of prudence strengthened that hatred and frustration. To put it simply, my bad social experiences did create a predisposition to hatred, which probably did greatly increase the strength of my reaction to my frustration with the system.
When I am killed or caught, they are bound to try to label and depict me as sick. Conformists seem to have an overwhelming need to depict the enemy of society as sordid, repulsive, or sick.
The Unabomber spent 20 hours with Dr. Sally C. Johnson for his trial competency hearing. She wrote a report that was handed to the court and then published on September 11, 1998. The report states, Dr. Kaczynski is extremely sensitive to even minor criticisms and tends to perceive any criticism, or even the absence of encouragement or absence of a positive response from an individual, as a deliberate attempt of harassment or humiliation. He also tends to seek support and interaction in ineffective ways and will frequently write an individual, believing that an innocuous question will provide a hint of the type of response that he is looking for from the person receiving his. He often has the experience and feeling that individuals who are talking at quite some distance from him have him as a topic of their conversation and are speaking negatively about him, and they are impacting in a destructive or hostile way onto his well-being. Mr. Kaczynski often suspects, without sufficient basis, that others are exploiting, harming, or deceiving him. He reads demeaning or threatening meanings into benign remarks or events. He persistently bears grudges and is unforgiving of insults, injuries, or slights.
Brooks was supposed to pick Eric up for school, and Brooks was terrible with being on time, and Brooks slept in and didn't pick him up, and that was it. That was it. And I said to Brooks, can you smooth it over? And Brooks said, it doesn't work that way with Eric.
He perceives attacks on his character or reputation that are not apparent to others and is quick to react angrily or to counterattack. These symptoms are all consistent with paranoid personality disorders. It is in our opinion very likely that Eric suffered from a paranoid personality disorder and not psychopathy. Ted Kaczynski had to work his way up to murder. He didn't immediately start bombing or work on bombing people right from the get-go. It was a building process. He writes about having to break his conditioning, and he brags about the vandalism that he engaged in, which helped him be able to murder.
Since the indoctrination during my childhood, I had strong inhibitions against ever breaking the law. It was only at the cost of great effort that I overcame these inhibitions. Here I am going to confess to, or more accurately, I am going to brag about some misdeeds I have committed over the years. They would ride their motorcycles on the road that was supposed to be closed, that sort of thing. They just didn't give a damn. And after I figured I had about as much as I could take of that, I picked a nice rainy day when no one would be around. I went over and took an axe to their cabin. I did quite a bit of damage.
I mean, somebody was very angry. He didn't break the door in to gain access. He chopped a hole right through the wall.
He went in and just destroyed their cabin and then took a poop in their tub and left.
You know, up above my cabin, there used to be a beautiful grove of old growth trees, you know, trees hundreds of years old. And there is a guy who's a neighbor of mine, Butch Gary. And this guy he's a real bastard. He runs a sawmill, just spews this filthy pollution into the air, not to mention the noise pollution from his engine. And the guy is not only a logger and sawmill operator, but he's a particularly irresponsible one. My intention was to put him out of business once and for all.
He sanded the sawmill, putting sand into the engine so that it just goes through the entire unit and shuts it down. And they had to repair everything to be up and running again, and it was a huge cost.
In the summer of '77, I strung up a neck wire for motorcyclists along the Divide Trail above Rooster Bill Creek. Later, I found the wire was gone. I hope it hurt someone.
Just like the Unabomber, Eric also worked his way up to violence through vandalism first. Eric used to engage in what he called rebel missions in order to get revenge on people that had wronged him or that he felt had wronged him. The missions start off harmless. Fireworks here, toilet paper there. But eventually it starts leading to egging some homes. Putting putty on people's cars. Supergluing locks. Using a paintball gun to break people's windows. And it continues to work up all the way to the van break-in event in '98. Before the massacre, Eric, in similar fashion to the Unabomber, sets up his own tripwire outside Blackjack Pizza to set off a CO2 bomb for anyone who might be trespassing. His friend and the shop manager, Chris Morris, tells him to remove it. As Ted Kaczynski became more radicalized and more willing to engage in violence, he started to slowly learn how to build bombs, stealing parts from junk nearby. He documents in his journals how each bomb performed, constantly checking the news to know the extent of the damage he has caused.
I was experiment 121. I'm reading journal entries from what he calls experiments. My device detonated, but the results, as far as we could find out, did not do enough to satisfy us.
And so it should be no surprise that we see Eric is also keeping track of his development of bombs and napalm, keeping track of the stock and quality of his bombs he's made. Eric goes even further in some respects. He wrote an entire document called The Book that he put on his website at some point. We don't know when, but it was there when the massacre took place. Just a reminder to everyone, it is illegal to replicate or attempt any of the things related to constructing bombs or creating napalm. Do not replicate any of this.
Pipe bombs. Pipe bombs are some of the easiest and deadliest ways to kill a group of people or destroy a few things. The way I bought most of my pipes is by going out and getting all of the caps one day, and then getting the pipes a few days later, or at a different store. You don't want to look too suspicious. If you are making the pipe bombs inside your room, you will want to have plenty of newspapers down, because accidents do happen, and if you have a big black stain on your carpet, Mom and Dad might ask some questions. Another thing, surgical gloves come in handy too, because your hands will be completely black by the time you are done. Once your pipe bomb's complete, you are basically ready to go, although I put about 2 layers of duct tape on my bombs, so they make less noise when transporting them.
The book document that Eric wrote continues on and gives us more insight into the questions many people had. How did Eric manage to hide all his weapons and bomb-making materials from his family? We are purposely only sharing segments of this document that help answer that question.
Napalm. In just about every anarchist cookbook, you can find napalm recipes. Styrofoam and gasoline is a fairly good mixture, but it has its downsides. It consumes a lot of styrofoam and takes a long time to make. I was personally able to make about 1 gallon of the stuff, but it wasn't easy, and I was almost discovered thanks to that fucking ever-present gasoline stench. Storage. Storing gasoline is one of the biggest pain-in-the-ass tasks I've gone through in the pre-war era. First of all, you have to take into account that any extra gas containers lying around the shed or garage can easily cause suspicion. Second of all, it smells. So putting a couple jars in your closet is a bad idea. Third, Gas expands when it is hot, so you don't want to put it in your trunk under a blazing sun all day long because it might just blow up. So some good storage areas are deep in garage closets that are rarely visited, in your trunk if the weather is not hot at all, or under a tarp in your yard someplace if you have a rather fucking large and wooded property around your house.
We are at the home stretch of our Unabomber segment, and we'll be moving on to comparing the real similarities of both their ideologies. But before we do that, we have to establish just how well known and in the news the Unabomber and his ideology were during 95 and 96.
There was a suggestion by the Postal Service to simply not carry packages anymore. They weren't willing to put them in airplanes. And that added tremendously to the already unbelievable amount of pressure on the task force to solve this case. You can't have the mail in the United States come to a halt. It's almost inconceivable.
Los Angeles International Airport is under full alert with security measures not seen since the Gulf War.
And it turns out the guy wasn't serious. And so after the 4th of July weekend comes and goes and no one's killed, nothing blows up, the dogs get called off. And it goes back to Unabomber normal.
Everybody in the United States, it seems, and probably many other countries, is aware of and interested in the Unabomber and what comes next in this story.
In the summer of 1995, almost every day or every other day, there was a little article describing the Unabomber and what his interests were and these different theories about what we should do.
This is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather.
Good evening. The publisher of the New York Times put it bluntly. Whether you like it or not, he told readers today, we're turning our pages over to a man who has murdered people. The Times and the Washington Post gave in to the demands of the killer known as the Unabomber to publish what he calls his manifesto. It was a difficult and controversial decision, as correspondent Jim Stewart reports.
It was behind the business pages, tucked in between the want ads, but it was all there today, all 35,000 words of the Unabomber's message to America. The Washington Post and the New York Times reluctantly agreed to the joint publication under threat the bomber would strike again if they didn't. We print this document for public safety reasons, the two papers said, and at the direct request of the FBI and Attorney General. The bomber calls his manifesto Industrial Society and Its Future, and in it he urges a revolution against what he calls the industrial system. The FBI said today it hopes someone will see the article and recognize the author.
We have seen through the previous publication of excerpts from the manuscript that it really does advance the investigation, and we've gotten very productive leads from that.
There haven't been many over the years, and only this indistinct sketch of the suspect now believed in his early 40s. In 17 years, he's killed 3 people with his homemade mail bombs and left many others horribly maimed. Lately, investigators have focused their attention on Chicago area high schools and colleges the bomber may have attended.
And I'm sure that there will be a lot of people in the academic community that will read this and will say, well, that sounds just like, and they'll flash back to a student or a professor that they have worked with.
But that, say critics, is a long shot at best, and meantime the bomber gets his way. San Francisco criminologist Michael Rustigan accused the newspapers of caving in to the demands of an extortionist.
Do you really think that he will shrink into obscurity and be a quiet guy, a nice guy, fully satisfied seeing his manifesto in print in the 2 major big city newspapers? I don't think so. He's going to want more.
There are a lot of law enforcement agents who fear the same thing, but really didn't see any choice in this case except to urge the newspapers to cooperate. The question now is, can the word of a serial killer be trusted?
In order to get our message before the public with some chance of making a lasting impression, we've had to kill people.
I want to leave a lasting impression on the world.
The system tries to regulate every aspect of human behavior. It prescribes drugs and psychological techniques to make people content with their servitude. This is accomplished largely through the schools.
Society may not realize what is happening, but I have. You go to school to get used to studying and learning how you're supposed to, so that drains or filters out a little bit of human nature. But that's after your parents taught you what's right and wrong. Even though you may think differently, you still must have more of your human nature blown out of your ass.
In modern industrial society, natural human drives and instincts are being systematically repressed by the requirements of the system. One of the most important means by which our society socializes children is by making them feel ashamed of behavior or speech that is contrary to society's expectations. Anyone who deviates too far from the norm is subjected to psychological pressure or labeled mentally ill.
Society tries to make everyone act the same by burying all human nature and instincts. That's what school, laws, jobs, and parents do, whether they realize it or not. And then, the few who stick to their natural instincts are cast out as psychos, or lunatics, or strangers, or just plain different.
Today, people live more by virtue of what the system does for them or to them than by virtue of what they do for themselves. In modern industrial society, only minimal effort is necessary to satisfy one's physical needs. The majority of people go through life with little or no sense of autonomy or initiative.
We are so different. You aren't human. You are a robot. You don't take advantage of your capabilities given to you at birth. You just drop them and hop onto the boat and head down the stream of life with all the other fuckers of your type.
Our use of mass entertainment is optional. No law requires us to watch television. Everyone complains about television, but almost everyone watches it. The system would not be able to survive without the surrogate activity of the entertainment industry. The only realm that man is permitted to have full autonomy is in the pursuit of choosing which surrogate activity he wants to engage in, because all surrogate activities benefit the system.
The human race isn't worth fighting for anymore. Everyone is obsessed with Hollywood, beauty, fame, glamour, politics, and anything famous. People just aren't worth saving.
I hate people. The technological society may in some sense be inevitable, but it is only inevitable because of the way people behave. Consequently, I hate people.
I hate most people. We know what we are to this world, and we know what everyone else is. They deserve the hatred. I know how people are and why, and I can't stand it.
It can be argued that primitive hunters have more of what we call noble qualities than modern man. But whether this noble savage idea has any truth to it or not, it is of minimal interest to me, because to me, all of mankind, with rare exceptions, is contemptible. From the things that I have written in some of my earlier notes, some people may assume that I tend to idealize hunting and gathering societies, and while they live closer to the things I believe to be good, much individual freedom, much more meaning, purpose, and control of their own lives, still, the fact remains. Even the most primitive society carries in it the seeds of what I consider evil, since all societies have the potential for eventual progress towards civilization. Thus, I am more inclined to wish that the human race would become extinct.
But alas, I have realized that yes, the human race is still indeed doomed. It just needs a few kickstarts. Like me. If I can wipe a few cities off the map, and even the fuckhead holding the map, then great. Just thinking if I want all humans dead, or maybe just the quote-unquote civilized, developed, and known of places on Earth. Maybe leave little tribes of natives in the rainforest or something. I'll have to think about that.
It isn't natural for an adolescent human being to spend the bulk of his time sitting at a desk absorbed in study. A normal adolescent wants to spend his time in active contact with the real world. But in our society, children are pushed into studying technical subjects, which most do with contempt.
People go on day by day with routine shit. Why can't we learn in school how we want to? Why can't we sit on desks and on shelves and put our feet up and relax while we learn? because that's not what the real world is like. Well, hey, fuckheads. There is no such thing as an actual real world. It's just another word like justice, sorry, pity, religion, faith, luck, and so on. We are humans. If we don't like something, we have the fucking ability to change. But we don't. Or at least, you don't. I would. You just whine, bitch throat life, but never do a goddamn thing to change anything. Well, goddamn it, I won't be a part of it! I have thought too much, realized too much, found out too much, and I am too self-aware to just stop what I am thinking and go back to society just because what I do and think isn't right or morally accepted. No, no, no. God fucking damn it, no. I will sooner die than betray my own thoughts.
We all know what many of our schools are like. The teachers are too busy taking knives and guns away from kids, and they do not have the means nor the capacity to enforce the latest techniques to turn kids into good little computer nerds who will serve and live in lifelong compliance to the system.